Hello, Chris Samardizch here. My concert experience, episode 4. And so we're going to get into that. It's going to be all about my career working with the Allman Brothers and working at Maritime Hall as a lighting technician with all these different bands. So this is the start of my career where I became a professional. The first 3 shows that I had in this series are I was basically a spectator. I did light shows as a hobby. Okay, so we're going to go to screen share and start this thing up right now. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we are. So the first slide is my intro slide, and here we go. So this show is going to be about the 90s, okay? And the music starts to change. There's an alternative, there's grunge, and a bunch of different scenes start happening. There's a jam band scene that's kind of evolving with the Allman Brothers and the Grateful Dead, and we're going to get into the bands that did that with them and have become very popular now. So we're going to have the typical my shows. I'm doing photographs, slides of the bands that play, and I do a audio talk about them. And this one we're going to also have laminates. Okay, so let me go to my laser pointer here, get that rolling. Okay, whoops, wrong one. There we go. And laser pointer. Okay, so over here we've got a laminate right here. This is a tour laminate from the Allman Brothers from '95. This is one page out of my laminate book. And then so this laminate you have to get by being on the crew or a band member or a band member's wife or something, and working the shows, a manager or something, lighting guy or whatever. And then there's event ones. Okay, so for instance, this orange one right here is 1995, and it's May 14th and May 20th at Radio City Music Hall. We did 6 shows. And so that's an event pass. They had their own pass, Radio Cities, that type of place. Okay. Then this was a Super Bowl we did that year. It was a 94 Super Bowl, but it was in 95. And it was the 49ers played. And I got to go to the Super Bowl and see my team win the Super Bowl, which was awesome. And we did the tailgate party. So there's the talent pass special. Obviously, you're not going to, my Allman Brothers pass didn't mean anything except this pass got you everywhere. Okay, and then Red Rocks. This is also a 95 Red Rocks pass. I don't know if that worked for all summer, but at any rate, I have that one for that. We played there that summer. So here we go. We're going to do the next page. All right, so I'm really starting off a little bit early here. It's the last show I saw in 1989. It was November, and the Rolling Stones came and played Oakland Coliseum, and they had this massive stage, as you can see, and it almost looked like a city block, of staircases and fire escapes and lights and, kind of New Orleans overhang and lighting everywhere and video screens built into it. And my friend Rock Scully got me tickets. I went with him and Amy, and we ended up sitting in the 20th row center. Charlie Watts got us these tickets, and it was just awesome. And this kind of inspired me to continue, and try to push my boundaries as a lighting designer and visual guy, and just kind of blew my mind. So I wanted to mention that show. So the next thing, we got hired, the Brotherhood of Light, my company, Pete Rabinowitz and myself got hired to tour with the Allman Brothers. Bill Graham, David Graham, and Al Crabtree hooked us up with the Allman Brothers. And by July of 1990, we were on tour with these guys, Greg Allman, Dickie Betts, and they had 2 new members, Warren Haynes and Alan Woody. And this was like, it was not a reunion. It was more like a rebirth. And Dickie here and Greg both wanted a light show, and they were instrumental in hiring Pete and I. And here's a t-shirt design I did. And then here's an album cover that Kirk West, Dickie came up with the idea of the audio of the album, Shades of Two Worlds. And then Kirk and I came up with this concept of they're sitting in a, like a sharecropper porch and down in Memphis. And then I have the modern psychedelic light show. So it's kind of the old and new, the blues and the psychedelic mix is the theme of the album. And here is another mix we did. We shot in Macon for the Japanese tour that we did. And then here's the cover for Where It All Begins. So this started my Allman Brothers career, and it goes on for 24 years with these guys, with Greg. So next, okay, so here we go. So what you're going to see here is this is an all access pass. This is the Seven Turns tour, and you can see the pass is really worn. And then, so what happens when you go on a tour, the opener act or the co-headliner in this case was George Thorogood. So the George Thorogood crew gives you a pass, and then we give them a pass. Everybody in both crews gets passes. And so we did about 6 weeks on the road, West Coast, Midwest tour with George Thorogood. Then we got to the East Coast. We did some shows with Blues Traveler, a few one-offs in Philly and New York, Jones Beach. And then we kicked off another leg, and we went and did Meatloaf joined us. And so we toured, and we ended up in Madison Square Garden. And then in 1990, we went on another tour. It was kind of like an evening with tour with just Allman Brothers and smaller venues. And we opened up the tour at the Trump Taj Mahal. And this was just a big deal when he just opened it. It was like the grand opening of the Taj Mahal. And there was like laser beams. We were driving into Atlantic City. It was just, it was pretty exciting. I mean, the venue wasn't anything special. The hotel wasn't anything great, but it was hyped up. Donald Trump's a great hype artist. Okay, so after this tour, we were doing a tour and in Dallas at the end of this fall tour, and the band was going to Japan, and they got passport pictures taken. So they said, "Hey man, why don't you guys get your passport pictures taken? Because you're going to need to get a passport eventually anyway." So we go, fine. So now we're driving back to fly home the next morning to the hotel, and the production manager goes, "Oh, by the way, guys, you're going to Japan with us." So we went to Japan, and here's those red laminates are the ones from Japan. So that was really exciting for me to do a light show in Japan. And we did, I think, about 8 shows. Okay, so the following year, we did the Shades of Two World, which you saw the album cover. And the guy who designs these Allman Brother passes, the ones that are the Allman Brother official passes, is Kirk West at the time. And he designed this with some of the artwork I gave him for that album cover. And he took this mushroom and the liquid lights, and this was the tour pass of Shades of Two Worlds, which was really cool. I did the artwork on it. And that tour, pretty much, Blues Traveler did some shows with us, but also Little Feat, we shared, I think we did about 8 weeks of touring with Little Feat. And so it was a great double bill. And then, okay, well, I'm going to skip anyway, Kirk West got married over here. He was one of the guys, and that was his wedding, just to fill that in. And then, so then what we did was we went and did these Macon City shows. And this was Macon City Auditorium, and we did 4 shows, and they had a recording truck, and they were recording set 1 there. And so from Macon, it was now the 31st, 91, it turned to 92, and I'm going to go back. Then we went in the Japanese tour, 92, and we went to Japan in January and February, and we were there for a month or a little bit less maybe, and we toured completely all over Hiroshima. We hit 3 different islands, and we toured in like 10 different cities and multiple dates, and it was winter, and it was really crazy. And so anyway, that was our second Japanese tour, which was really awesome. Okay, so then we got back from that and we kicked another tour in, and we went to the Beacon Theater evening with, and this is the pass for the Beacon Theater. We did 10 sold out shows. And then that New Year's, let's see, no, actually the following New Year's, 92, 93, we opened up Maritime Hall with the Grateful Dead sound crew, and we did Zero Mojo Hana. That's that pass. And here's the Blues Traveler pass for 92. And then I also worked with Greg Allman and Alameda All Stars because he moved to San Francisco or Bay Area, and we did a bunch of shows around there. Okay, next. So 93, I was on a break and I was doing shows with the Melvins, which is like this kind of grunge band. And they were friends with Kurt Cobain, famous band. And we went on tour with Rush, and we did 4 shows with Rush in 1994. I guess that's 94, yeah. And so we did this Rush tour, and my friend that helped us with our projection over at Nocturne was doing the projection, and they were using film. They had 3 projectors on this Rush tour. So here's the Blues Traveler, and then here's the Beacon Theater shows sold out. The 10 shows sold out, and this was Universal Amphitheater on the 92, 91 tour. All right. So now this is a show I went to that was in between Allman Brothers tour. And it was, the bands I remember were X. They were kind of a famous punk band from LA. Fishbone, they were ended up in the headliner spot. Primus opened up the show, and King's X, I remember all 4 of these bands. It was at Shoreline. It was called the Gathering of the Tribes, and it was a weird show because none of these bands were like headliners. Maybe X was a legend, but the others, they were all up and comers. So it was like they put all these people together. And anyway, we went to the show. We had a lot of fun there. Okay, so next we were doing the Beacon, and I went and visited YouTube. YouTube were setting up the garden, and they were doing Zoo TV. And these square boxes here on the screen are these are actual video walls of the day of 92, 93. And they were just kind of rear projection screens that were all bolted together to make a giant video. And they had cars hanging and massive televisions all over the place. And they were just trying to do the multimedia thing. And I saw them play in Oakland. I got free tickets from the lighting designer, and I went and saw them play. So I got to see the Zoo TV tour, which was really cool. Then in 93, we went on tour pretty much with Blues Traveler at that point. I think they were starting to get some good record sales. We did Laguna Seca Days, and that was with Fish, the band Fish. And then we did this spring tour at the Beacon again in 94. And then we embarked on the Horde tour. I also was working with a band called Abraxas, which is down here in the left-hand corner here, right here in the skies. And they were the Santana band with Alfonso Johnson on bass, and Neil Sean was playing the guitar. He used to be in Santana 3 album and Caravanserai, and he was playing all the leads. So it was like they were called Abraxas. I did a bunch of shows with them at the Fillmore. They never really went anywhere, though. I don't think they made a record or anything. Then, so now we're on this Horde Festival, 94. We did a bunch of different touring there. And this band, Government Mule, which was 2 guys from the Allman Brothers and drummer Matt Apps, got together, and they made this first album, Government Mule. And here's the Horde Festival, 94. And we did Laguna Seca Days again, and that was with Fish that year again. And I don't think the Allman Brothers were there in that one. And so we did this Horde tour. Now, we also did this Gibson guitar benefit, which had like every guitar player from San Francisco at it, the Fillmore. It was a pretty cool show. Bob Weir, Jerry Miller, Greg Allman. And then this was, they had a Jimi Hendrix exhibit. This is the little pass that you could buy. The guy gave me because I'm a big Jimi Hendrix fan. And that picture of Jimi Hendrix was on the back of the semi, and we'd be driving down the highway from gig to gig, and we'd be following Jimi Hendrix. It was blown up really big and pasted on the back of the truck. And the truck was like a museum. They'd park it, and then people would go through and see all this Jimi Hendrix exhibit, and then they could buy the merch, the records and stuff. So, okay, here we are. This is the Horde Festival crew. So, or Laguna Seca days. So Fish, here's Fish when they were young and starting out. And we did a couple shows with them. Blues Traveler, and they just got their gold record. And here they are with Paul Schaefer. And they were so we have the Allman Brothers were the headliner. Second liner was Blues Traveler. Third liner was Big Head Todd. They had a hit record out. And then the openers, believe it or not, was Sheryl Crow for the first 6 weeks or 5 weeks. And then when she left, Dave Matthews was the opener. So, and we would be setting up the light show, kind of our liquids and stuff on the side of the stage. And they would be playing because they started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's really awesome I saw Dave Matthews like 15 times and Sheryl Crow like 15 times. And then one of the shows we did, the Black Crowes were on the bill with us too. And they had just come out with one of their third album at that point. And one of the other shows we did was the Spin Doctors. And this is all part of this kind of Horde Festival jam band craze that was starting to happen in 92, 93, 94. And so that was another thing that was, besides grunge, there was jam band. Okay. So now we're going to keep moving on and just to some shows I went to. Now this is Dave Matthews. And so we did the Horde Festival, and I said, my girlfriend, we were at my house in San Francisco. I said, this band's playing American Music Hall. Let's go see them. They're really good. So we drove down there, found a parking spot. I kind of forgot they were playing, pulled up, somehow got us parking spot, walked across the street. Fenton, the lighting guy, stand there, and he goes, "Come on in. The show's going to start." And we sat in the lighting booth and watched Dave Matthews do his first 2 albums in American Music Hall. And I don't think he ever played a small venue after that because he just blew up and he was doing giant stadiums and basketball arenas. And also I got to see Jeff Buckley at American Music Hall. The same thing. I went there on the bus because there's no parking. And I walked up in front, and his manager recognized me from the Allman Brothers, said, "Come on in, man." And I got to see Jeff Buckley play at American Music Hall. And then like a year later, he died in a drowning, which was just so sad because he was just so talented. So then the next thing, Jane's Addiction played at San Francisco Civic, and they had this album out, Nothing Shocking, plus their third album. And it was a pretty crazy show. And then I saw Soundgarden at the Warfield, and they were Black Hole Sun, I think was a record that was out at that point. Then I saw Smashing Pumpkins at the Cow Palace. Here's the poster. And this is what the show looked like. It also had a lot of video wall stuff in it. And they had this big rocket and all kinds of crazy lighting. And I got to meet Billy Corgan that night, which was pretty cool. Anyway, once again, I got it. When you start working in the business, you end up knowing so many people that are either you worked with on tours, like the LD for the Smashing Pumpkins, I knew from a tour I did. So also our sound company. So our sound company that did the Allman Brothers did Metallica and the Rolling Stones. So we had connections there. Anyway, so during the Horde Festival, the Rolling Stones were playing. We had a day off. We were in New York and we were in New Jersey. So we went over with the Horde crew from Bill Graham Presents, who ran the whole ambient thing. And we went and saw the Rolling Stones in Giant Stadium. And my friend was the LD. I had passes. I got in for free. And that was the Voodoo Lounge tour. And then Also that year, or maybe the following year, I saw the Eagles, the Hell Freezes Over tour. A friend, a merchandise guy, got me into that one, and that was the first $75 concert. I was just outraged at the price of tickets. So anyway, then we went and saw the Stones again in Oakland, and my lighting buddy got me these front row seats. But the only problem was they were way off to the side, and I couldn't even see the stage. It was just horrible. So I went and talked to Shelley Lazar, who runs the tickets for Bill Graham, and she goes, "Well, we'll put you in this booth here. It's called the Mixer booth. It's right in front of the mixing station." A couple of the Barsodis were in there from Bill Graham, and a couple of people I know that work there. And then, so me and my girlfriend are sitting there, and then Metallica comes in and sits with us, and I watch the Rolling Stones for 2 hours with James Hetfield and Lars and the bass player. Anyway, that was pretty cool. So to follow up on this Metallica at Madison Square Garden on March 10th, we were playing in New York, and we were rehearsing at SRI Studios, and so the sound guy said, "Hey man, you got to go to the show. We got you passes, go." So Dwayne Betts and myself, Dickie let Dwayne go. He was working guitar tech, but he said, we got to go to the garden. Dickie let us go. So we went over from SRI Studios. We went to the garden and we watched the show. And so what happened during the show is a really weird show. All of a sudden, about 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the show, this guy dropped one of the ladders, and guy climbs up in these trusses up in here, and he's up here, and he hoists up a light, and I'm like, what the hell are they doing? Fixing it during the show. The band's playing. It's really weird. And then all of a sudden, all these sparks and stuff come out of the truss, and lightning looking stuff, and the guy like drops the light and flies down, and all of a sudden he like gets on the ladder, and these sparks happen, and he falls, and he gets his foot caught, and he's hanging from the ladder, and he's electrocuted. And this crew comes over and takes him off the ladder, and then they put him on a stretcher, but it's all a gag. It's all a gag, and they did it at every show, and it was they wanted even more destruction, but that was it was pretty cool. It was very unusual. So I want to mention that. Okay, so now here we're back on the road. There's the Radio City, the Super Bowl, and then I'm touring with the Jefferson Starship and the Allman Brothers that summer, and we went out with Gary Brooker and Procol Harum. He's the leader, and Steppenwolf, and we did I think it was a month-long tour in the East Coast, and then I launched over in the Allman Brothers tour. And then this one here was the first cyber broadcast that was done, and we'll get into where that's all about next, but let's go to the next one. So 95, this guy Boots Houston, who used to play saxophone for a bunch of bands in the Bay Area, he ends up opening Maritime Hall, where we did a show earlier. It's a big 2,500 seat theater, Sailors Union Hall, third story of this building on First and Harrison Street. And so he gets together with Chet Helms, the original promoter from the Avalon Ballroom. They're all friends all the way back from the 60s. And so there's the Family Dog Laminate, and the Family Dog reopens. And these are all shows that we did there, the first couple shows. And here is that same year, we did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opening, and I'll get to that one next here. So the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we I'm just going to highlight it, a couple acts. Sheryl Crow played there. John Bon Jovi, Bob Dylan, and Bruce Springsteen. Well, Heart, also the band Heart played. Actually, it was just Ann and Nancy Wilson played a solo there. And then Bruce Springsteen played. One and only time I saw Bruce Springsteen, did about 5 songs, and really lucky to see Bruce Springsteen. And then also I saw Bryan Adams at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. So just another show. Okay, so now the Maritime Hall opens. The grand opening show is Greg Allman, Iron Butterfly, and Zero. And that's this one over here, the Popeye guy. And here's a bunch of other shows we did that are just laminates. They made special laminates for every show. So just had a bunch of them. Okay. And this was Zero, Steve Kimmock, and Etta James, and Halloween Bash, and the Hookers Ball, Dr. John, Dave Mason show. So okay, we just keep rolling here. So okay, James Brown played with 2 days, and then Sublime, and so we set up the show for Sublime, and the guy dies in his hotel room that afternoon, and we never did the show. Anyway, that was Jimmy Cliff, the Mermen. Okay, Greg Allman again. Anyway, here's the second set tour. And we're going to move on to more Maritime Hall, Yellow Man, Ken Kesey, Motorhead. We did Motorhead, which was great. DOA. So they started doing, and now I went and saw Tool, and they had this really psychedelic light show. Not quite as psychedelic as this picture, but similar. I just kind of made it kind of fun to look at because I couldn't find any pictures from that tour. It's probably the next one they did. This is around 98 or something, 99. Anyway, I can't remember, but I saw Tool at the Warfield, and I kind of dug them. They're pretty cool. Okay, we're going to go into the Maritime Hall, about 50 acts that played there. And I'm just going to rattle them off. It's all going to be pictures. And you saw some of the laminates, so here we go. So this page. Okay. So we've got Wilson Pickett, okay, Etta James, John Lee Hooker, Rammstein, their first tour in the United States, Eric Burden, James Brown with the red suits, Jimmy Cliff, Michael Fronte and Spearhead, Greg Allman, the Radiators, David Crosby, and God, I can't remember this guy's name right now. Arlo Guthrie, excuse me. Okay, so that's sort of the first stuff. Okay, Redman, Billy Bragg, Derek Trucks Band, Neil Sean Band, Todd Rundgren, George Clinton, P-Funk All-Stars, did about 6 shows with them. Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys, Buckethead with the KFRC Bucket, Morris Day and the Time, and the Disturbed. Okay, next page. Testament, the Black Eyed Peas before they were ultra famous. Okay, String Cheese Incident. Okay, over here on the. Okay, back here we've got Slipknot, one of their first tours. Okay, Insane Clown Posse, Mo. Okay, jam band Mo. Okay, Exodus down here. The Roots played there about 5 times. And we did a 4-night stand with Phil Lesh and friends towards the end of the 90s, with Jimmy Herring on guitar and Warren Haynes. Well, he's off the screen here, sorry. And Phil Lesh on bass and John Molo. Okay, next we got Fear Factor, Cradle of Filth. Now we're in the metal bands. Sepultura, King Diamond, and Soulfly. Okay, so these are all, they had metal, we had reggae, we had every type of thing. Okay, so this page, we got Moby, we had the Orb, we had the Flaming Lips, played twice. Dio was there twice, and Motorhead, and then we had this hip hop. There was a lot of hip hop bands. Now I just put this one picture up there because it's a montage of all the famous stars, gangster hip hop guys. But we had the shows I did were Wu-Tang Clan, Gangstar, Salt and Pepper, and NWA. Those are the ones I remember doing. And then this reggae guy is Bunny Wailer. We had a bunch of reggae guys too play there. So almost every reggae band, Third World and U-Ray and all of them. Okay, next. Then we did Gwar, Napalm Death, the Melvins, band I worked with for years, Newfound Glory, Pennywise, Anti-Flag, and Crystal Method. Okay, so you can see we had a total variety of stuff. Okay, then we had Dream Theater. They were there twice. This show on the poster is Dream Theater and the Dixie Dregs with Steve Morris, who plays for Dixie Dregs, and he plays for Deep Purple now. And they were really good. They were just, Dream Theater's like really awesome. So, okay, so now that pretty much ends Maritime. There's really 50 artists that you just saw there. So the next show I did, I was working with the BGP crew occasionally, and we did this ENET festival, which is the poster. It was Jane's Addictions. You can't really read it, but it says ENET Festival. And so what they did was they had it in Bill Graham Civic Auditorium. It holds about 7,000 people in the main room. It's a great room. And then they have these two side rooms, and one was like the classic rock room, was like, I think it was Wilco or somebody was there. And then I was doing a light show for the pagan room, which had all kinds of weird dancers and strange pagan sort of entertainment. And then they had upstairs in this kind of open lounge area, they had like Steve doing Liquid Lights and Ken Kesey doing like an acid test on a microphone with Grateful Dead music. And it was just this, it was a very psychedelic room. It was a psychedelic experience. And then on the other side, there was like a room you went in, there was like dodgeballs. There was just an empty room, and you could throw the balls and bounce them off the wall and have a dodgeball fight or whatever you wanted. And then there was another 3 rooms that were hooked together that was put together by the archives. It was like a psychedelic tripped out journey where you went through into black lights and weird posters and psychedelic experience. And so it was really cool about this show that, and I think Alex Graham, David Graham's son, was involved with Perry on this. So once it hit midnight, all these other bands played and all these other events we were doing in these rooms and light shows, and it was like a multiple people working. They just said, stop everything and go watch Jane's Addiction. And they played their 1.5-hour set, and they had all these chicks dancing, really scantily dressed and stripper poles. And it was just, they also had a stage in the middle that they came out and played an acoustic, and they were just really great. And it was just it was probably one of the best concerts of the 90s for me. I just had such a good time, including I was working there. And so I loaded out the show, and I had my car all full of gear. And this bus driver, I ran into him, and he had been driving for us earlier on our Allman Brothers tour. And he invites me in the bus, and it's all the pole dancer girls. It's like 15 or 12 girls, and they're all, super hot, in shape. And they're like, oh, do you guys, to me and my girlfriend, you guys want to go to Vegas with the stay on the bus? Come on, let's go. And I'm just like, no, I gotta go. I'm sorry. It was just, oh man, one of those rock and roll moments. Anyway, so now here we go. We've got still stuff going on at Maritime with Jimmy Cliff and all these bands. And now we're on the tour of Allman Brothers. It was from kind of an Eat a Peach Pass design, and we played at the Joint in Vegas. I also did this corporate with Steve Miller right here. I did a bunch of projection stuff for that. Okay, now we got the 97 tour. There's the passes that Kirk designed. There's a David Crosby CPR tour. There's the Steve Miller one. There's the Summer of Love I did with Chet Helms. There's the Allman Brothers at the Joint again in Vegas. And then the 98 tour is the Summer Peach Fest and Peach Party, excuse me. And then the March 98 tour, there it is, the Beacon, all the dates. So there's, you can see there's like 12 or 15 shows there. Okay, so now that year, 98, I went over to Hawaii. We had a house, an apartment in Honolulu, and I worked at the Rolling Stones concert. And I was in charge of setting up the Rolling Stones dressing room, which was, you'd think wouldn't be much, but it was a whole semi full of stuffed pool tables. And, they had a barber chair, they had a washer and dryer, they had everything. And we had video stuff we set up so you could see the show, their guests could see the show, and full on coolers and drinks and everything. And Mick Jagger had a running room, and each person had their own room. Anyway, we set it up, and you can see the stage. It was just, even more elaborate than the other stages that we saw. And once again, the sound company from the Allman Brothers was doing the sound. This is their PA system here, which looks decorative. And we sat out in front of house with them. And this was the Bridges to Babylon tour. And so, once again, I saw the Rolling Stones again. I actually saw them up close and personal. Pretty daunting. Kind of starstruck by them. Okay, so next we got the 1999 tour. And this is a 30-year anniversary tour with the Allman Brothers. So I'm going to, same year I did the Exotic Erotic Ball at the Cow Palace, which is this one. And then we also saw, following year, the Black Crowes with Jimmy Page. And then also that year, we did the Mountain Air Festival with Phil Lesh, and he got back out, started playing. And Warren Haynes and Alan Woody had left the Allman Brothers about 2 years before. And they got Derek Trucks in to play slide guitar with Dickie Betts. And they got O'Teal Burbage on bass. So the Allman Brothers were still going strong. And Government Mule had their own thing going. And so anyway, we're going to move on to this show right here. It was in Atlanta, and it was on May 7th, and it was the last Dickie Betts show. And he left the Allman Brothers, and this is just history. And he moved on, and with his son Dwayne, who was a good friend of mine, who still is, and they reformed his band Great Southern, and went on tour for the next 10 years. Now, here's the Government Mule. They had this album out, Dose, and then they had another third album out. And then here's the Phil Lesh band with Jimmy Herring, Warren Haynes, and Phil Lesh, and John Molo, and John Baracco on keyboard and vocals. And so this was kind of a weird conversion. Dickie had left. And so unfortunately that year, Alan Woody in August, we're doing a show, and he died. And so Alan passed away. So now Warren lost a bass player, but he's playing with these guys. And and so since Dickie left, Alan died, he joined back in the Allman Brothers. So we got O'Teal, Derek, Warren, and Greg, Butch, and Jamo, and Mark Quinones. So it was this weird convergence, and Jimmy Herring joined with Phil, and he went on to play with the Dead after that. So just, stuff happens in the industry. So we're going to move on to here. So there's Government Mule off the deep end, and they started having different bass players sitting in. This is my Maritime Pass that you can see I really used the hell out of that one. This is a Phil Lesh pass. We did a 2001 New Year's with Phil Lesh and friends. So we were working with both bands. And then this is the All Access Allman Brothers tour for 2000. And what happened was Jimmy Herring sat in from the Phil Lesh, from Aquarium Rescue Unit, from Jazz is Dead, which are bands he was in previously, and played with the Allman Brothers for the summer. And then when Alan died, Warren joined us. And so we did the One for Woody benefit. Here's the laminate for it. And so that's going to be so at this time, Maritime Hall closed in 2021. And Alan died, and we did the One for Woody benefit, and Dickie moved on, and it was a new kind of formation guitar setup for the Allman Brothers. So it's kind of a great time to end this show because it was kind of a change of the guard in a lot of places. So this was a show we did, One for Woody at Roseland, which was the Allman Brothers band, Warren Haynes and Matt Apps, minus Alan. And then we had the Black Crows also played, and Phil Lesh and Friends played. And there's the Government Mule with Matt and Alan playing. There's Alan playing with the Allman Brothers with his 18-string bass. And then here's just Alan with all his guitars and basses that he owned. Great picture. And he was just a great guy. He was a monster player, man. He was just so heavy. Really, really sad that we lost him. And so I'm going to go to this one now. So that was it. You know, it was 89, the last show in 1989, the Stones. There's 3 Stones in here. And then we had, the end of Maritime Hall, and then the kind of reformation of the Allman Brothers. So that's it. I'm going to go back to it. And so, yeah, it was perfect timing. Okay. Oops. Anyway, I'm going to go back to stop screen share. And there I am. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It was a really intense time for me, and I kind of tried to mix it up with my laminates and photos of all the bands. So I'm going to sign off, and hopefully I'm going to be releasing this in late August 2021. So enjoy the show, and subscribe if you feel like it. I'm going to probably do more of these coming up, maybe the next decade, which was more of a tour decade for me. I went out with Robert Plant and the Doors of the 21st Century with Ray and Robbie, and we toured all over the world, and Ian Asbury. And I also toured with the Dead. So the story continues to go on and on. So anyway, thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.